is here with us. So Sada is a Somali archaeologist, art historian, science communicator and presenter. She fled Somalia as a refugee, becoming a Swedish citizen, and holds a PhD from University College's London's Institute of Archaeology, where she's serving as Associate Professor of Heritage Studies. Sada is the first Somali woman to study archaeology, and for over a decade, she was the only trained Somali archaeologist working in Somalia and Somaliland. Her team carried out and published the first and most comprehensive mapping of Somaliland's archaeology, and she's the founding director of its Department of Archaeology. She's also a cultural theorist who believes we need culture in times of war, as articulated in her TED Talk, Cultural Heritage, a Basic Human Need. In 2021, with her book, Divine Fertility, it's here, you guys should definitely get it, it's amazing. Anyone who's interested in Somali history. So she became the first archaeologist of a non-European descent to win the SAFA Book Prize. Sada's other honours include being selected by the Hay Festival of Literature and Arts for their 30 Global Writers and Thinkers for 2017 to 2027, and the New Scientist magazine list of the most inspiring women in science of all time. She's a founding director of Horn Heritage Foundation and its digital museum, working on research and conservation of heritage across the Horn of Africa. Sada's work regularly appears in international broadcast media with her as a presenter, writer, and subject, including The Guardian, CNN, Current World Archaeology, National Geographic, Vanity Fair magazine, Channel 4, Futura Channel, the BBC, the Sunday Times, and the New Scientist. And I think, are you a Wayfinder recipient? Is that new? And she's also the Wayfinder recipient. I'd love to hear more about that for 2023. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Sada. I've loved your work for a long time. Yes.
gabadhan saado oo martida noo ah na bartay Fawziya waxay tiri waa gabar horta ilaa PhD gaartay jaamacado badan ka soo baxday siiba macnaha jaamacad ku taala UK waa archaeologist macnaha dadka baara taariikhda iyo macnaha madaxfiyada iyo waxay soo saartay mapping taariikh iyo wax Somaliland macnaha taariikhdeedii iyo firkeedii iyo faceedii hore waxay aad badan u shaqeysaa waa qofka kaliya oo non European ahayd gabadha ugu horeyso Soomaali ah oo fieldigaas macnaha qaybtaas gasha oo noo macnaha baarta taariikhii hore macnaha heritage-kii wixii laga dhaxlay ama dhulka ku jiraan ama dusha saarnaadaane aad badan u shaqeysaa warbaahinno badan oo la soo koobi karin qaban Fawzi intay sheegtay laakiin waxaan ka xasuustaa Channel 4 BBC iyo Guardian qolooyin badan iyo waxaa kaloo la siiyay tiri waxyaalo kale oo abaalmarin ah waxa ugu dambeeyay aan xasuustay mid soconaysa ilaa 2017 ilaa 23 marka waa qof nasiib waxaan u helnay maanta inaan marka sacdiyo aan dhageysano waa wax lagu faano runtii oo dhiirgelin leh.
Okay, so we're going to have a few questions with Sada and then we'll open it up to the audience. So a lot of the soundscape relates to Somali women's memories of camel milk and camel husbandry. Do you have any specific memories of camel milk?
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Fawziya, for that very generous introduction. And Ayan, both of you for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here. So in my family, there is this anecdote that is told. And my oldest brother, when he was born, first child of my mother, there was a war. And within weeks, he wouldn't take the breast. And so she had to give him camel milk. And he loved the camel milk. So what happened was that normally men take the camels with them when there is a war. And all the women and the children go with the sheep and the goat. And that's how they separate. But my mother, because her newborn baby wouldn't drink anything else but camel milk, she had to go into the war with her baby. because he wouldn't otherwise survive. And until today, he loves camel milk, and I think it's one of the reasons he moved back to Somaliland.
So haddii su-aal la weydiiyey maxaad ka xasuustaa taariikhiyan caanaha geela adiga wuxuu kugu fadhiyaa marka waxay tiri walaalkay markuu dhashay wuxuu dhashay waqti u socday dagaalkii sokeeyey Soomaaliya ka socday marka waxay tiri caanaha keliya cabi karin waxay ahaayeen caanaha geela sideedabana waxay tiri Soomaalida raggaa shaqada geela leh raacidda iyo ilaalinta iyo ka warqabka haweenkan waxay leeyihiin macnaha ariga iyo idaha shiibka laakiin aniga nasiib dar waxay tiri wiilkii walaalkii yaraa waxa caanaha geelaha ma cabeen hooyada marka waxay noqotay tiri inay aado meelihii iyadoo nafteeda horeysa dagaalkii dhex aado si wiilkeeda ay u badbaadiso caanihii geelana ugu soo hesho ilaa maantana wuxuu jecel yahay tiri caanaha geela yarka walaalkii
My personal experience with camel milk is basically actually what sustains me when I'm in the field. Although we have a lot of livestock, I am vegetarian. So out in the field, I eat mostly rice with camel milk. So that's what I know I'll get anywhere in the field where I end up in nomadic camps. They always have some milk and some rice, which is after a long day in the mountains, very refreshing and nutritious.
There was
waxay tiri runtii aniga waxaan ahayd horta qof vegetarian ah xagga qudaarta u baxay laakiin shakhsiyan aniga waxaan ka helahay tiri bariiska lagu daray caanaha geela kuwaasaa macnaha aniga aan jeclahay tiri inaan ku qadeeyo oo ka dhigto cunto.
There was something interesting that we kind of found out, which was that even in the city, a lot of people who have family members out in the countryside, they get a camel brought out into the city so they can have a regular supply. So it's quite common for a lot of families to have, a camel in the city where it's a bit more industrious now. But I wanted to kind of, at one point in the soundscape, some of the women are responding to a kind of a story that I told, which is of my father going out to Somalia, and I remember it. He was kind of diagnosed with diabetes, and when we went out there, the reason why we went out was because he wanted to have this camel milk, and he wanted to basically go on a diet where, he was having kind of beans and camel milk. I know it's a particular type of bean, but the name isn't coming to. I'm sure you'll know of it. But essentially, he was on this kind of diet, and then not too long after that, he was kind of cured and no longer had diabetes. So I kind of wanted to ask you about this in terms of if you've encountered it in your work in terms of the medicinal benefits of camel milk.
That's really interesting because I recognize these kinds of stories, and if you look at the camel and also sheep and goat, which I heard it, these are animals moving in large distances, and they are eating very varied flora. So you have a lot of vegetations that they enjoy. Some of them are medicinal themselves. So there is a lot of associations between camel milk and healing. I have an uncle who was receiving dialysis and then went back to Somaliland and had lots, as he claims, much better health as a result of spending 3 months there drinking camel milk. And that his British doctors, when he came back, were very surprised with his results. And now we find camel milk here as well. So I think there is something, scientifically I haven't studied it, and I haven't actually studied the studies of this, but I wouldn't be surprised because it's a population and place where there is a lot of indigenous knowledge about medicinal trees and plants, and there's also a lot of knowledge about the camels and the sheep and the goat and the milk and what it's good for, because this is basically what they study, and in some ways it's because this is what they do, this is the animals that they survive on. It's almost like a laboratory, generation after generation of discoveries and understanding and inferring knowledge of what is good for what. And I mean, my work relates more to plants and understanding from a medical anthropology point of view, and looking at, for example, the time it takes for a Somali healer to be trained, Somali doctor. It's the same amount of years as my sister trained to become a specialist in gynecology and obstetrician, 13 years, and you're not supposed to practice unless you've gone through that, and it's often inherited, and it's not any son. It has to be someone who's able to keep knowledge of the secrets of medicine. So go ahead.
runtii ayaan iyo saada labadaba waxay taabteen faa'iidooyinka caanaha geela ay leeyihiin. Ayaan waxay noo taabatay adeerkeed aan umaleynay oo mar diabetes qabay cudurkan sokorowga. Waxaa loo diray tiri Soomaaliya daayadu galay cuntadan inuu iska yareeyo, iyo waxaa la siin jiray tiri caanaha geela iyo qaar ka mid ah digirta nooc ka mid ah sheegtay. Adi muddo markuu waday soo noqday, markii waxay dhakhaatiirta ogaadeen in diabetikadii levelkiisi ama uu ka biskooday ama uu hoos uga dhacay. Saadaas sii qaadatay waxay tiri aniga laftigayga adeerkay waxaa loo samayn jiray dialysis. Dialysis waxaa nadiifinta qofka kelyaha fadhiistaan oo dhiig loo nadiifiyo kelyaha. Marka waxaa loo diray tiri Soomaaliya, halkaasuu macnaha muddo ku maqnaa dhowr bilood. Wuxuu cuni jiray tiri macnaha asna caanahaas geela iyo cabi jiray iyo cunto gaar ah. Waxay tiri marka scientifically horta waa garaysnahay tiri, waa rumaysnahay inay daawo yihiin caanaha geela, laakiin aniga ma baarnay tiri. Waana dhici kartaa ay tiri markii dadkan Soomaalida ah waxay dhaqan jireen geela iyo ariga iyo lo', waana bulsho quruun badan noolaa, macnaha iyo waxay isku daaweyn jireen caanahaas iyo dhirta. Marka aniga waxay tiri takhasuskayga waxay tahay xagga oo dhirta daawooyinka waxaan bartay tiri oo la isku daaweeyo. Soomaalida waa ogtihiin geedo dhir la isku daaweeyaa jirtay tiri. qof kastana ma soo geli karo, waa in training lagu sameeyo, dhirta lagu kala baro, teeda daawada ah, teeda sunta ah. Gabar marka walaasheeda waxay jirtay tiri hadda ku takhasustay oo madha shahaadada ku gaartay oo 30 sano kadib macnaha hadda ay noqotay qof ku xeel dheer oo haddii loo yimaado daawadii ku daaweyn karta dhirta.
Thank you. That what you said before really fits into some of your work that you've developed around knowledge-centered approach and research around heritage. Can you tell us a bit more about this and how it relates to the preservation of culture in Somalia?
Yeah, the whole approach on the knowledge-centered approach came about when I was here in the UK studying for my BA, and I was trying to understand why there was no attention to the destruction of cultural heritage in Somalia during the war. And there were hardly any reports, any scientific papers. So I went around Somali community in London and took with me a catalogue of objects that had been looted from the museum in Mogadishu. And I realized that they seemed really indifferent. And there I was frustrated, thinking, doesn't anybody care about this? And here I am training to become an archaeologist, and nobody seems to care. about any of this. So in that frustration, I just asked the women and the men, but what's your heritage then if you don't care about these objects that have been looted? And that's when they said, oh, actually, and then they grabbed my catalog and they pointed out to different objects and said, oh, I know how to make this. My grandmother taught me how to do this kind of pottery. And we have this area of my village where you have the best clay. And they started competing. And all of a sudden, the whole room was full of people eager to tell everything they knew about their culture. And I realized that actually for them, there was nothing lost. I, as a trained archaeologist who were trained in museum and Western education, thought, okay, but how can they know so much about this heritage? They have all the knowledge I need about the objects as an archaeologist, the whole je n'importe quoi, how an object is made, why it's made, when it's used, where the raw material comes from. How come some random Somalis in London are keeping this knowledge, which is so specific? And then I started asking myself, thinking about, actually, this is the knowledge I was also passed on to. Because I remember when I was growing up in Mogadishu, in the summer, we were sent to my grandmother, who was in the countryside. And it was in the late 80s, we had a TV. It was summer. All I wanted was just to watch lots of Bollywood movies. Finally, I could catch up with them. But no, we were driven to the countryside, and I thought at the time, oh my God, this empty place. And I had to fetch water, I had to build a hut. I thought, why do we have to build a hut when we have one? But I didn't realize my grandmother was teaching me new skills, but we learned how to build huts. Obviously, we ran around and hurt ourselves, and then she would teach us what to use. So all of a sudden, there was nobody going to the pharmacy. You actually had to go to the landscape and find exactly what kind of leaves you needed to get and pound and then mix with other things and then use that to heal. And then when we actually ended up being refugees and having to...
runtii saada khayr allaha siiyo waa arrin muhiim ay taabatay. waxay tiri markaan baranahay BA-da waddankan waxaa jiray tiri tension oo cultural heritage dhibaato nagu dhacday, macnaha Soomaalidaan nahay dhaqankeena hataa dhibaatada waa soo gaartay tiri. marka waxaa jirtay tiri dad badanaan la kulmay tiri Somali community oo London degan. marka waxaan weydiiyey tiri maadaama aan ahay tiri dadka oo madxafyada baaro iyo taariikhaha iyo dib u kacashada, waxaan iri tiri haddiidan wax dhaxal aysan lahayn ama waxyaalo dad waxaan arkay tiri soo qaatay madxafkii Muqdisho ku yaala alaab taalay oo dadka oo dhan ka dhaxeeyay, wixii waa taariikh waa history. marka haddii ka naxaynay tiri qofka macnaha dhaqanba ma lehdin, qofka haddii wixii historigiisa us aruursanayn wuxuu ku dhacayaa dhibaato. markaas waxay u dhalatay tiri inaan bilaabo dadkii Soomaalida ahaa oo aan la kulmay, qof walba aan weydiiyo bal wixii uu yaqaano taariikh ahaan, history ahaan. waxaa ma ka dhaxelay tiri macluumaadka aan raadinayay, maadaama aniga ahaa qof arrintaas ku xil dheer, qof sameeya cawdi, darintii, dhoobadii, shuunkii, waxay noqotaba. marka wixii aan aruuriyey, wixii marka waxay noqdeen inay tiri wax oo dhaxalgal ah. marka waxaan ogaaday tiri culuumtiiba inay iyaga ku duugan tahay. marka waqtiga la isticmaalo, sida loo isticmaalo, meeshay ka timid, qof walba fieldigiisa. marka aniga siban waxaan u yeeshay tiri Muqdisho markaan tagay in countryside-ka ka baxsan magaalada daafaheeda, tuulooyinka inaan aado, hooyo aan la kulmo. hooyo lafteeda marka waxyaalo badan aan ka dhaxlay tiri oo hadday noqonay dhirta noocyadeeda iyo daaweynteeda, waxa loo isticmaalo, iyo xataa waxaan u malaynaa haddaan khaldana saada inaas tiri cawda iyo darinta iyo koofiyadaha iyo si loo sameeyo. macluumaadkaas oo dhan aan helay tiri oo marka hooyada aan ka faa'iidaystay aan aaday dhulkii.
So, and then I realized that actually when we ended up all of a sudden in the middle of a war and we had to leave the TV, everything we had, we just ended up going from one place to the other, walking, and literally ended up in those landscapes which I thought before were empty landscapes. But after having been with my grandmother, we knew exactly which tree to go to build a hut. We knew what to use to heal us, to eat, to find water. So I realized I was one of those random Somalis with some knowledge in my head, and that's when I realized that actually we preserve knowledge rather than objects. So the concept of the knowledge-centered approach came from that. But then the interesting thing is this concept relates to a lot of people across the world. It's often nomadic cultures, even people in Ireland talking about folk stories have spoken to me and said, well, I'm a farmer, and what I preserve here is how to farm and the traditions that we have, that we inherited generations. It's that knowledge, and I think within Somali culture, this is very much the way, the oral culture, because we carry very little. You have that camel, everything you have must go on it, and you move. But then if one night or one day your home burns down with everything inside, there you standing with your children, and you need to know exactly how to recreate that, and there's no Argos or any place to go and buy things from. So that was where this idea came from.
waxay tiri ra'yiga ama aayadiyada aan qaatay oo ahayd sidabaha loo dhiso mudulaha iyo guryaha wax badan ka faa'iideysan. Horta waxaa dhacay tiri dagaal sokeeye, waqti dagaalka markii waxay noqotay tiri cagtaa baxso, qof walba inuu ka cararo, macnaha hortiisa u cararo. waxaa lihi marka hooyada ay bartay waan ka faa'iideystay tiri, macnaha mudul hataa si loo dhiso ahaad, macnaha mudulka yar qofka aqoon wuxuu kusoo dhacaya tiri meel aan marka caruurtii iyo ilmihii ay ku daba socdaan, meel aan ku heta aad lahayn, meeshan ay jira argos iyo dukaan wax laga soo iibsado. marka waxay noqonaysaa farsamadaada ha ku bixiso. aniga marka nasiib waxaan u yeeshay tiri dhaxalka hooyaday inaan ka faa'iideystay oo aan samaystay. hataa waxay tiri tusaale usoo qaadatay wadamadan kale, hataa Europe, Ireland oo kale, jiilba jiil, generationka waa jiilka moogtahay, jiilba jiil waxbuu ka dhaxlaa. qolooyinka oo beeraleyda ah sida beeraha loo tacbado, waqti ay soo goostaan, nin walba wuxuu ku leeyahay waxaan ka dhaxlay awowgii, awowka awow, waa dhaxal aan haysto. marka waxay tiri tusaale u qaado, waad hadalka dayta ay sheegtay aada u fiicnaa, haddii gurigaada uu gubto wax farsamadaada aqoon, waxna aadan aqoon, balaayo ku heshi waay, markaas xaggeed u baxsanay. marka knowledge centerka saas ayuu keentay, macnaha qofka in objectiga aan la fiirin laakiin macluumaadka la qaato oo laga dhigto focuska, oo wixii dhaxalka bini aadamka waxay iska dhaxlaan aqoonta, wixii aqoona markaas la diiwaan geliyo oo laga faa'iideysto.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I do feel like so much is passed down through storytelling, songs and rituals. And recently I kind of came across these videos of a ritual happening. At the time of seeing it, I didn't quite know what was going on, but there was milk being poured over a man's head, and there were loads of men around him. And then in your book, you talked about this, it's a ritual called Anashub. I wondered if you could expand on it, and whether you can maybe tell us about maybe the importance of camel milk in that ritual.
Yes, I think that's a really great example that continues today. So the Somali society is a pastoralist society. So now we have camels, but for thousands of years, at least 5,000 years, we've had cattle. And now you see them in the rock art, and often people look at the iconography and the image, last scale, maybe you've seen it, images like that. And it's about the worldview in, for example, how they see their cosmology, their own ontology and philosophy about life. And one of the things that I realized through 15 years of research was that actually we have lineage which is believed to be a sacred lineage. And in order to keep that and not contaminate that sacred lineage, there are a lot of rituals that take place. Some of them we've lost through time, and some of them continue. And one of them is the coronation of the chief. Every clan, Ugas, Garad. So when there's the coronation, there's the milk, just like you observed, where they pour milk over the new chief. But there's a lot of things that happen around him. So, and this is a months-long process that culminates in a week or two of celebrations, where everything is specific. So, for example, there's a tradition we've lost now. It's still in the Isa area of Western Somaliland. Is a community do it still. They have still their mountains named for this ritual, so that the king is taken there, and the soil from that mountain is brought, and pots are made from it. So it's whole system, maybe very similar to. I got so excited about something that I'm normally not that excited about, the coronation of the King of Britain, when they talked about the oil, because we also have this anointment, and the milk is actually another variation of the oil. So the milk obviously has always played a key role in humanity. This is the first thing that we survive off. So everything's about milk. And because the cattle do not survive in that harsh environment, because our region was much more fertile before, so there was pastures for cattle, but now due to the desertification, the camels have become the main livestock. But for many reasons, because they move, you can easily move your camels, you can't move your cows as much. So when there's volatile conditions, people invest more in keeping camels rather than if they were to settle, then in a peacetime they would have more cattle, depending on also the environment. So you have traditions that are associated with that, and camel milk has played a role in it, because that's the milk that they have access to in these ceremonies and these and this is in fact what the book's about, the fertility, which is to have more milk. And the rock art, although it's 5,000 years old, one of the most prominent parts of the cow that's depicted is the udder. The udder are always exaggerated to show that there is abundance of milk.
ayaan waxay weydiisay saada buuggadan waxaa kusoo qaadatay macnaha camel milk, caanaha geela iyo faa'iidooyinka uu leeyahay. marka taariikh badan ka hadashay waxay tiri horta dhulkeena Soomaalida 5,000 sano ka hor waxaa la dhaqan jiray lo'da, laakiin waayihii dambe saa ka warqabtaan waxaa dhammaaday xaggii dhulkii cagaarka waa nabaad guuray, dhulku waa nabaad guuray, abaaro iyo waxbaa jira. marka dhulkii wax waaye waxay iskugu soo shubatay tiri geela kaliya inuu ku noolaan karo. marka waxay tiri dhaxalkii waxaa jirtay tiri Soomaalida ilaa hadda oo taagan, oo weli taariikhda taagan tahay. marka ama ugaas ama suldaan la dooranayo waa ogtihiin inay tiri waa lagu caano shubaa. caanahan waa symbol bini aadamka oo dhan waxay u yihiin macnaha calaamad ah nabad iyo waarasho. waa wax dhaxal ka awow ah. hadda tusaale waxay usoo qaadatay boqorka halkan ayaan la dooranayay, laftigiisa saliid waxbaa la mariyey, dhaqankaasay leeyihiin oil. waan ogtihiin inay tiri subag iyo saliidda waa wax isku meel ka yimaada. marka waa heritage, dhaqan iyo dhaxal basharka ay leeyihiin. caanahana waxay u taagan yihiin nabad. waxaa laakiin daba socday tiri ugaaska marka la dooranayo ma ahay tiri waa lagu caanisho waa lagu kala tago. rituals waxaa jiray tiri macnaa ducooyin iyo wax la aqriyo oo 2 week ay xafladdaa socotaa. marka waxay tiri qoladan waxay usoo qaadatay Djibouti waa jirta waa aragteenay tiri boqorkooda ama ugaaskooda markay dooranayaan meel waxaa la geeyaa buuro ah oo ciid oo secret macnaha oo iyaga u aaminsan yihiin inay tahay ciid barakaysan oo marka ama qofkii loo soo qaado ama lagu shubo. marka waxay tiri marka caanaha geela saasay ku timiday tiri ilaa yoomina haada faa'iidooyinka ay leeyihiin dhaqan ahaan waa u leenahay faa'iidooyinkaasna waa lahayeenay tiri oo awowayaasheen aan ka dhaxalnay. marka lo'din laakiin waa socotay tiri marka waxa waaye boos waxaa soo galay geelaas u soo galay.
So I just wanted to add also the reason then why they do the milk is because he's from a sacred lineage, as we are all supposed to be. He is then responsible. He needs to have ritual efficacy to bring fertility. So it's a way of pouring milk on him. And the other thing is, in the Horn of Africa, as a tradition, people have a proverb that says, keep things wet and God will keep you wet. And that means even our leather objects need to be moisturized to show thanks to God that this was once alive, we are keeping it wet so that there may come rain. And he needs to be so pure, the king, that he's worthy of the milk, and his ritual efficacy will bring rain. And then with rain we get pasture, and with pasture animals thrive, and then we have more people who live off the milk.
waxay ku dartay caanaha geela ama caanaha sida waxyaalaha oo loogu shubayo waxay tahay qofkaas ama ugaaskaas la calmaday suldaankaas la calmaday in duca laga helo oo noqdo nin reerka u nabdoon barwaaqo kusoo kordhiya roob laga helo haddii reerka ku barwaaqoobaan lagu dogo lagu baraaro lagu bashaasho. marka arrimahaas oo dhan macnaa waxaa dhaqan ahaan waa ogta macnaa qoyaankaas ama qoyaankaas aan sii hayno waxay tahay in wax wanaagsan laga helo.
Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you so much, Mahdi, for your wonderful translations. But it's really difficult doing
I'm trying my best to
You're
reach
doing
Sada.
brilliantly. You're doing really brilliantly. Thank you. So I think it's probably time to open it up to the audience for questions. So, if you have any questions. But before we do, I guess I should explain some of the objects that are on the table. So the one, maybe I'll stand up and it's easier. So this is what you would use to milk a camel. So this is woven by women. So there's a separate project that we do around weaving, which is about the skill set of these kind of handicrafts. And then this is how you would make milk. So camel milk wouldn't be butter. Sorry, subak butter. Camel milk wouldn't be used to make butter because it doesn't have the fat, the right levels of fat. So it's just too difficult. So you would make sheep or goat butter using this churning object, which is also woven from the local environment. And then this beautiful carved object is where you would store the children's or babies' camel milk, and this is their own cup. It's really cute. I love it because look, it's got the cup contained too, which is so smart, isn't it? This is referenced actually in both these objects are referenced in the soundscape, but you'll see the transcript later. So that's just, I suddenly thought actually it's quite worthwhile explaining that. But any questions? And I don't know, Chloe, do I just... Oh, you've got a separate mic. Brill.
Hands up.
On your soundscape. Oh, hi. Excellent talk so far. Really enjoyed it. On your sound talk, through the translation, I sort of guesstimated that the taste of camel milk was sour. So I'd like your description, because I've never tasted it. I'm sure quite a few people haven't tasted it either. So could you sort of describe the taste of camel milk to you?
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, yeah. I think it probably varies. So when they were talking about the camel milk there being sour, they were referencing 10-day-old milk. So camel milk preserves really, really well outside normal conditions compared to cow milk or other dairy forms. And that's to do with particular proteins in the milk that inhibit certain bacteria. So actually, for a dairy product, it does unbelievably well outside refrigeration and can keep for up to 10 days. And that's probably why people are able to survive so well with it without refrigeration. So it's a really amazing kind of magical dairy product in a way, because you don't, there are common bacteria that you would get in goat or sheep or cow that you just don't have with camel milk. So that's sour milk. But when it's fresh, it is actually quite sweet. So my experience of it in Somaliland is fresh from the camel. It's not sour. It's a little bit sour compared to dairy. Cow. It is, but I'd compare it to goat milk. But luckily, you guys will all get to try camel milk because we have some for you to try. So after this finishes, so hopefully you'll try some, and then you can see it for yourself.
fawziya gabdhaha waalidiintan aan u sharxo marka ugu horeysay waxay ka hadashay alaabtan ujeedaan way soo qaaday waxay tiri waa haruubkii kan oo geela lagu liso kan midkan gabdhahan emin yanguanis arrin marka ka saartaan marka la lisaayo kan caanaha lagu dhigahay tiri we keep and this is for the babies ilmaha yararka iska leh oo caanahooda loogu qaadaa marka ninkaasna wuxuu weydiiyey caanaha geela suusac soo maha suusac maxay u noqdaan oo dhanaan waa soomaaliya u qaraariyiin wax yar marka waxay tiri nasiib wanaag caanaha geela iyo lo-da kaaga waa kala duwan yihiin geela ma u baahna in fridge la geliyo back home soomaaliya fridge iyo dadka uma baahna waxay survive growing karaan 10 days ilaa 10 maalmood caanaha geelana waxay ugu duwan yihiin lo-da iyo ariga iyaga subag lagama leh waxay macnaa waa mineral nasiib wanaagna hadhow qof tagahay maleta qof walba waa inuu caanaha geel wax ka cabo insha allah.
Yeah, I had a question. With the baskets, are they not are they waterproof, or how do they keep the milk in there? Does it not seep out because it's made out of
So there's a kind of process that happens actually daily before utilizing the basket. So it has to be sanitized and waterproof on a daily basis, and they use tree resin.
That's sad because we didn't know. I think there's different. Is it different baskets will have different methods for watering? But Sada sort of said something about it because we had that question as well. We couldn't work out how it responds to water. But is it butter?
I mean, in some context, I've seen it ghee used to, because it's if you look at its texture, you can press the butter into it to keep it tight and dense.
waa la cogaa taas kale qoraha la gubayo
waa la culaa the baby one waa la culaa dirta.
That's part of the sanitation process.
Sanitation,
Yeah,
Exactly.
so you use fire essentially to sanitize it. Yeah.
One more here for the live audience, and then we might go out to. Sorry, one more for the and then maybe we'll go to online if we've got questions.
Okay. I was just interested to know your story about relative diabetes and went home to. Is that a reflection as much as I don't doubt there are qualities within camel milk that is restorative, but presumably, I may be wrong, but the Western diet and the processed foods and the sort of some of the rubbish that's served up to our Western palates causes a lot of these symptoms and illnesses. So was it then the camel milk or just the sort of detoxification of what rubbish that we are forced to eat by the advertisers and all of those bad men out there?
Well, I mean, for my dad in particular, yeah, I guess there's also a different lifestyle as well. So he was able to kind of, when he was out there, he was moving more. So there was a lot more kind of exercise that he was doing day to day. So I think it's a number of things or a number of factors. But yeah, I mean, when he was living in the UK, yeah, there was much more sugar in his diet, much more salt in his diet. So yeah, kind of with the camel milk and the beans, it's just kind of, yeah. But it's all kind of, it was mostly anecdotal. I'm not sure if there's any studies on it, but there was just a kind of a general agreement amongst the women in Camden about the different kind of health benefits. But I just, you know, there's a clearly, it's based in some reality if that many people are having the same experience.
Okay, we've got quite a few. How many online? We've got 2 questions. How much time have we got? Oh, it's fine. So we'll take those 2 last. Okay, is that all right? Okay, Khadija. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All. I like to stand up because I'm a community worker, so I like my voice will be reached to everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organization who had started this really interesting project. We have been so excited as a community when we heard that there is a camel milk research or project. And first time they approached our community, we are based in Camden. Everyone was so excited. Elderly, medium age, everyone excited. Camel. The elder people were saying, "Can we come? Can we come?" They were really begging to come because they had nostalgia really to hear and to talk about this. That's really first my point. Secondly, I'm so impressed by Sada, how extent of knowledge she has collected. Look, in even young women, to be honest, truly speaking, really, believe me. Because I know most of our community, really, because we have been refugees for so, actually, mainly, I think, especially young people, younger generation, they try to really ignore what is culture back home. They think it is really backward things. It's not interesting. It is not worth to learn in here. But I think she has set up really very, very interesting and also far-reaching research. And I would like to congratulate that she will also take up this area if she hasn't done before. But the knowledge she has, it is really sufficient even to reach everyone. Thank you very much. That's all my comment. I have no question.
Thank you, Khadija. And thank you. So Khadija runs a wonderful community organisation just based down the road. It is there, and we worked with her wonderful ladies. So thank you, because none of the soundscape would have happened without you. So we really appreciate the great work you've been doing there. And you've been there for 30 years now, haven't you? So that's brilliant. And we have Sada back in London. So the Netherlands. I'm so pleased she's back at UCL. Are you at UCL, aren't you? Yeah. So she was off at Utrecht for years. You're all over. So it's great to have her back in London. But I think we had one.
There's a question.
Why is camel milk healthier than all other milks?
That's a good question. Okay. So why is camel milk healthier? I don't know if it's necessarily healthier than all other milks, but I do think that it is interesting regarding the way in which camels are. They're just extraordinary creatures. So the fact that their blood cells are shaped, U-shaped, to allow them to drink, I think they could drink 30 gallons of water in 10 minutes. Any other mammal would drown. So I think that's 115 litres, something like that, over 100 litres. They could drink over 100 litres of water in 10 minutes. and they've got a stomach, they've got a water stomach. So everyone thinks the water's in their hump, it's actually in their stomach. So they are just extraordinarily designed for the desert, and even the proteins they have. There's loads of studies around how is it that you have a dairy product that can last without refrigeration, and it is to do. They've got interesting proteins that you don't have in other dairy milks. I'm not sure how that developed. Maybe it's evolutionary. It would be wonderful to learn more. So any scientists out there studying, we would love to, reach out and find out more about why. So I think that has a massive impact maybe on why it's healthy. There's less fat and it has a high protein, more protein as well than cow dairy. So it is actually quite. Camel milk is special. There is something really special about it. I'm not sure if when it's pasteurized, what happens to that, because you're talking about camel milk at source, where you are drinking it from the camel. It's not going through that pasteurization process. So there's probably a lot of healthy bacteria actually that your gut is getting that you wouldn't get through pasteurization. So, the pasteurization process is wonderful for milk because it keeps people from dying. So, in this country, I think, cow milk, it's terrible. You get listeria, but actually listeria, you don't tend to get listeria in camel milk. So there are interesting chemical things happening, but I'm not able to know more than a few things that I've read online about it. So, sorry. I hope that's a bit helpful. I think we had 2 online questions.
Hey, thanks. I've really enjoyed the talk so far. I was going to ask if you wouldn't mind expanding a bit more on your knowledge-centric approach. It was really fascinating to hear how you discovered all of those stories and knowledge, and touching on Ireland as well, all the folklore and things like that. And then, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind talking a bit about how you changed your approach and how you made use of those sort of pockets of knowledge and stories.
Thank you so much. I think it's the context in which I came to realize was through that interaction with people and trying to bridge between 2 cultures. My Western education, we have museums, you have the Stone Age, and then you have the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, and as a student of archaeology, that's what you study, and the object's important and the site's important. But here you have a whole population that is moving constantly and are not building as much as well. So, and I think this perspective, when I shared it across conferences and with the different communities, including indigenous communities from different parts of the world, for them it was, okay, thank you, you've articulated how we preserve our heritage, because often it's been that people have assumed that they don't care, just as I assumed that they don't care, and that in fact giving them their objects would harm the objects, and they don't know. In fact, they are the scientists behind the objects. They made it, they created it, they are the custodians of it. And so understanding that there is a whole different way of keeping knowledge, which is ultimately what we want to preserve and use today. For me as an archaeologist, maybe I'm probably one of the a different kind of archaeologist, because for me the past is not relevant in itself. I'm not antiquarian, I'm not interested in objects for the sake of them being antiquity. It's what knowledge can we get, how can we use them today. So the knowledge-centered approach is helping us now in the communities that I work with and those who have been able to make use of it globally to challenge problems that we have today, including deforestation, climate change, our relationship with nature. When I became a refugee, we were some of the few of my group who could build their own hut. Other people had to use plastic tents. Imagine living in a plastic tent when you have a baby and it's very hot during the day and it's very cold at night, whilst the woven mats, the Somali aqal, it's designed for keeping people cool during the day and warm at night. And so it's a way of now reapproaching the landscape, reapproaching our resources. And we have climate crisis, we have all this environmental deterioration and the resource, how we, are conditioned. You mentioned about, the men up there who make us eat all these, sometimes dodgy things that get us ill. So I think it's the bigger context of seeing how we can bring out important knowledge on concepts that resonate and can be useful to a larger, hopefully global population.
intaas haddaan Soomaali ku sheego su-aal kuwii horta waxaa laga hadlaya faa'iidooyinka caanaha iyo waxay ku kala duwan yihiin caanaha lo'da. marka hadayt waxaa ka jawaabta Fawziya waxay tiri macnaha samayska ama nuxurka ama unuga caanaha geela ka samaysan yihiin waa ka duwan yahay kuwa lo'da. saas darteed waxaa laga yaabaa biyaha u cabahayo intaasoo litir iyo geedaha u daaqayo inay keentay inuu ka caafimaad badan yihiin caanaha kale oo lo'da iyo ariga. Khadiijo waa mahadnaqday communitiga iyo macnaha gabdhahan hawsha ay qabteen siiba Sada. hadda gabadhaas kale su-aasha weydiisay hadda su-aal kaloo muhiim ah waxaa jira odagaan u weydiiyey oo ahayd ayaan la weydiiyey caanahan lo'da ama geela see macnaha u daaweeyaan daabeetikada. marka waxyaalaha ay sharaxda waxaa ka mid ahaa jawiga oo bedelmay, dhaqanka oo bedelmay, iyo cuntada daayetka oo gala aabaheed digir iyo caanahaas geela oo nadiifka ah oon soo marin process warshad soo marin iyo socodkaas iyo dhididka iyo climatka waxyaalo badan asbiirsaday taasaa keentay marka caafimaadka. marka waan ogtihiin isaga uu sheegay cuntadan cunnu yiri meeshaan waxa jira waa wax process soo mara oo warshado soo mara iyagoo macnaha fresh ma ah. marka keena wadankeena waxaa laga helaa caanihii cuntadii wixii dhan wada organic ah wada fresh waxaas oo asbiirsaday. laakiin su-aal kaloo gabadhaas ay weydiisay waxay ahayd maxaa kugu kalifay Sada in center knowledge-kan hawshaan aad u soo jeesato. marka waxay sharaxday waxay ugu dhaliyay tiri barashada aan baranayay archaeology-ga wixii taariikhdii iyo dhaxalkii iyo dadkanaga macnaha reer guuraaga ah oo ka soo guuray wadankoodii halkaana yimid in iyaga laftigoodii wixii ay hayeen laga dhaxlo loo diiwaan geliyo si ay uga faa'iidaystaan macnaha bulshooyinka kale macnaha sida jiilasha soo socda. waa ogtihiin ay tiri waxyaalaha aada uga helay Sada taabat waxaa ka mid ah ka warramay tiri haddii markii wadankaa la yimid ama oo la degay plastic tent dadka markay degaanay tiri macnaha guri oo plastic ah ilmo yarna aa haysato kuleel iyo dhibaata kugu qabanaysa iyo cudur. laakiin iyada nasiib wanaag waxaan aqaanay tiri aqal Soomaali aqalka Soomaaliga maalinkiina waa ku kulul habeenkiina waa diirimaad maalinkiina waa qabow. marka arrimahaas ay ugu kala faytiray in aan u soo jeesto si aan cala aqal bulshada ugu reebo wax ay ka faa'iidaystaan dadkii hore oo tagay jiilashii hore aqoonta laga soo minguuriyo loo guuriyo dadkan dambe si ay uga faa'iidaystaan iyagana aysan la dhiman dadkii hore. dhammaasaan insha allah. caanaha geelna waxaan ku darnaa wax yar xataa waxaa lagu sheegay qur-aankeena marka ilaahay uu tilmaamayay wa ilal ibili kayfa khuliqat sida geela loo abuuro fiiriya oo ilaahay uu qur-aan ku sheegay. marka specifically waa aayad qur-aan marka hadaa Fawziya u tarjumi karto ilaahay aayad uu ka dhigay mucjizo ah.
So in the Quran there's references to camels
si loo abuuro fiiriya
and the specialness of camels. Is that what you were yeah and that's really fascinating and I think it I mean I guess a lot of those monotheistic religions were in the desert
aan guryo lahayn. marka asaga waxa uu ahaa daadsaa sheegteen caanihii hilibkii gaadiidkii kula asaas kugu ahaa. marka si gaar ilaahay u taabto yiri waa waxyaalaha
how much you could survive off it, not just the meat, the milk, also used in different elements for
Wood.
like the tendons of the camel is used for structures. You know, so you use every element of the animal. So it's a pretty amazing. You know, I don't believe Somali people would have been able to survive in the same way without that special relationship and bond they have to the camel. Yeah, yeah, like the Sami people. Yeah. So I think we had 2 online questions. I'm not sure what they. Do you want? Yeah. Okay. Have we got time, Chloe? Yeah. I think. Yeah. Okay. Great. One last question from the audience.
Thank you very much. This was a very interesting topic. In Central Asia and South Asia, a lot of the time, the livestock owners use their pastures and also use their areas that they keep the livestock, especially women, as a form of letting go the day in terms of having conversations regarding the challenges that they face. And that provides some psychological as well as health-related issues that they deal with. They communicate where there's no doctors, where there's no resources available. Somalia being what you talked about, herding communities, is that similar? Sort of like, does it allow for women of the community to come together in order to discuss the challenges that they face, or also in terms of finding solutions to the problems, as it would be natural or anthropogenic problems that they face? And its simplest term would be is to be able to find for each other's husband and wives through this process of being together, and what we call it is yayloks, where women get together and look after their livestock and also look after their pastures. Is this something similar in Somalia?
Should I answer it through weaving, maybe? Okay. So we've recently been doing a lot of weaving projects, and so women, there's when you're building the Somali agal that Sada was referencing, that will be built by women, and so you will have women coming together to build certain elements that are complicated, like the roof, the kabid, which is a very complex woven roof. So you need many hands for this, and there's traditional songs related to this building of the roof, and there's a lot of humor as well in the songs. So there's in one of the weaving songs, you know, you had what was it? We had one where the women were basically they were saying, "You have not provided us with the right snacks," you know. So you know, things like that. Really, you know, really angry about having to come together to weave someone's house, and then that woman has not provided them with the right snacks. So there's a lot of humor, I think, sometimes in those songs. And I think women, you know, the weaving songs, when they're weaving these objects and that knowledge is passed down, the weaving songs help keep that knowledge of the patterns and the way of weaving as well. So I guess that's a really important way in which women come together. I'm not sure, they wouldn't normally be taking care of the camels. I think camel husbandry is mainly done by men. I think in Somalia, I think goats and sheep would be left to women and children to tend. But everything else is pretty much done by the women. I feel like, if you think about it, all the objects, all the, you know, the house that you live in, I don't feel like and that's why there's not quite the same reference to male poetry, because everything that you know about Somali culture, it feels like Somali poets get a lot of praise in the culture. And I always think, well, of course they would, because they've got time to write poetry, because they're not actually building the house or any of the functional things that you need to survive, you know. So yeah, they're not raising the children while doing that. So yeah, I feel like the Somali women are really very much the backbone of a lot of a lot of knowledge and a lot of nomadic life. The survival of the nomadic life relies on these amazingly skilled women.
So Southeast uu ka hadlay, the Southeast maybe you mentioned about maybe their main livestock was cattle, and it's different from camel. As mentioned Fawzia and Sada and Ayan, it needs a hard life because the camels may leave the house and away from the village for 1 month. So they only survive for the milk that they get from that milk. So it's hard for the women to look after the camels. But as I agree, Fawzia, she mentioned all the other jobs, and mainly jobs is designed by the woman at home. So only the camel, maybe the Southeast, they don't look after camel, maybe the cattle or goats or sheep. That's what I can add. Sometimes I joke with Bengali and Asia and Southeast. Have you ever eat camel, not drink camel milk? Have you ever eat meat? No, how can I eat camel milk? So it's a cultural difference and the area.
That's so true.
I'm just going to read out one question from the online audience because the first one was answered already. But one question online: when the camels give birth, is the milk still taken?
I think so. The camel milk that is mostly preferred is that of a pregnant camel. So once the camel gives birth, the baby isn't taken away. It is just it essentially becomes what's it called? I think it's like the camel can be milked about two to three or more times a day. So she'll be able to feed her baby as well as provide milk for whatever family that it's in service of. But yeah, it's that's kind of when the milk is considered to be the best and to have the most medicinal benefits as well.
I think we're out of time now, are we? Is that what you're saying, Chloe? Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit dozy here. Okay, well, thank you so much to our online audience and to everyone here for your wonderful questions. And it's just so exciting to have the opportunity to share what a wonderful product this is, but also just, you know, the amazing relationship that Somali people have with this animal, an animal that is not comical. Okay, because I have issues with the way camels are seen in Europe. But you know, but go and have some snacks. I think the snacks are. Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Yeah, Chloe might explain.
Feel free now to get some refreshments. We're going to just pop that curtain over, and then you can go straight through into the next room. Shall I mention the next playing?
Oh, yes. Yes, so basically we are going to play the soundscape again. It's a much more relaxed listening, so don't, you know, worry too much. You can read the transcripts are available now. So I think they're in
I'll
next
just go
door.
and get them.
Okay, brilliant. So for anyone who
table.
wants the context of what they heard, you now have text that you can listen to again. But definitely go and try some camel milk, and we've got some Somali tea as well. So enjoy.
Yeah.
Thank you.